I want to welcome our guest today, Becky. Tell us a little bit about you and what you've been doing and where you've been working. I know that you never miss a webinar and that we've been friends forever on LinkedIn, but we're so excited. This is the first time you've been on here. So share a little bit about yourself with our group.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. I love the Beauty School Directory webinars. Always big proponent of education. And thank you everybody for the congratulations coming through the chat. I see those coming in, so thanks so much. Anyways, I have been in higher ed for almost 20 years, Jen. I cannot believe it, but I have been—
got started when you were 7.
Super young. I got started. I actually started in admissions when I was an undergrad student. So if you count those years, for sure, 20 years. But anyways, so I actually started off my higher ed journey working with, admissions in my undergrad, doing tours, helping with phone calls, connecting with students, and then transitioned to the classroom. And I was an adjunct professor for many years, teaching English as a second language. So that's a fun fact. A lot of people don't know about me, but I actually, was the perfect candidate for it because, believe it or not, people coming from Asia want to have a blonde teacher. So people approached me and they were like, hey, we're looking for an English as a second language teacher. Would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely. So I got to teach really fun things like American culture and pronunciation, oral communication. Was great. I specialized in, got a TESOL certificate, so I could specialize in that. And that's really how I got started with higher ed, and my journey with different colleges, universities, language schools was in the classroom. But also supporting myself, working like Nordstrom, doing sales, have always loved sales, always had a side hustle. And when I was looking for something more full-time, I went, back to admissions because it was a love that I had in undergrad. It was a full-time position, and it was the perfect combination of education and sales. And that's what I always say about admissions. Dip my toe in the water with different types of admissions, being a field rep, being an inside rep, being a dual rep, being a DOA, being a multi-campus manager. So lots of experience within admissions, and then also in just different student support roles. Worked in a university academic resource center, worked with students with disabilities. But to be honest with you, Jen, when you get bit by the admissions bug, you always go back to admissions. It's just like one of those things.
Take that certain person, I feel like, and that's what I want to talk about today with you, Becky, because I do feel like people who are in admissions and really love it, they'll stay forever. They might try something else, but they're going to come back, because at the end of the day, yes, they might have that sales gene in them and that thing that drives them and they want to meet numbers, but there's something different about admissions compared to sales. And that's really
so different.
Helping people and being compassionate and being able to see someone from the very beginning of the journey to watching them graduate. I just think it takes a special person. Unfortunately, today, which is why I am assuming a lot of people are on our webinar today and why so many people signed up, we're seeing a lot of turnover. And so if your school is facing turnover in admissions, you're not alone. You're right on trend if you care about that, which, can be exciting. You're not special in that way. We're all dealing with admissions problems. Becky, why? What is going on specifically with turnover? Has the remote work, has that had an effect, you think, on people quitting?
Well, if I had to say, like, I think there's a lot of things and we're going to talk about it, but like, what is the one overarching thing? I think it's that we're just not finding the right fit. You kind of alluded to that earlier. So we're going to talk more about that, but I think really that's what it boils down to, is we have to be really particular with who we're putting in this role and making sure that they're going to be the right candidate, because we know it's not for everybody. And it takes a certain person to really do well and excel and get the results that you're going to want, from the role. So I think that's really why we see so much turnover, is because we didn't put the right person in the role to begin with. Now, I think if COVID taught us anything, it's that, pretty much any job can be done remotely.
Mm-hmm.
And that it is possible to do admissions remotely. I know through COVID, I worked remotely. And, we were very successful, never missed any of our enrollment goals, even through COVID. And a lot of schools, especially beauty schools and other, trade schools, career colleges, they actually grew through COVID too. So it's not to say it's impossible. I think it's definitely possible, but I think do we have the tools that we need to be successful in a remote environment for our teams? And are we open to allowing our people to have the option to be remote? So I think
let's
it's
talk
a lot
about
of
remote
things
there for a second then. So first of all, if you are a small one campus beauty school with one admissions person, I'm sorry, you got to be in person.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Becky?
100%. And I think that what it boils down to is like, we need to have someone there to be the face of the school, right?
Yeah.
We need someone there when there's walk-ins, there's tours that come in. We need someone there. Now, is there flexibility if you have a larger team and you're able to do that? Absolutely. And are there tasks that can be done at home, like phone calls? Are there ways that we can run, admissions appointments, enrollment appointments? If we have the tools in place, absolutely it can be done. But it also requires, I would say, more oversight from management to make sure that people are doing what they need to be doing, and first of all, autonomy is a reward that we get once we've proven ourselves. So I think it can be tricky. It can be, it's definitely something I think schools should be open to for the right candidate if they need that. But you have to have the tools in place to make it work. So,
I love the idea too of a hybrid. So like, let's say on a 5-day work week, you decide you need to be at the campus 4 days or 3.5 days. And you're spending that other day doing the reports, catching up with your leads, booking those appointments for the future days, especially if there's a trend where like people aren't coming in on Fridays or people aren't coming in on Mondays. I like that. But if you are a smaller school, it's just not possible. Now, if you are a multi-campus school, I love the idea of taking a rep who's seasoned and doesn't want to come to work every day, move them to more of a call center role where they are doing first outreach and appointment setting. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it too. Yeah, from home. I think if you have a CRM in place where people are able to actually make calls to the CRM, I think you have to be careful with people having just like a personal cell phone and making calls on their cell phone or texting from their phone. I think in this case, it's really important that you have a CRM in place where all of the communication, the outreach can be done through the CRM. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible to do that from home, to make those calls, set the appointments, send follow-up emails, do follow-up phone calls, and even through DocuSign, like enrollment appointments and things like that, that can be done remotely.
Here's what I love too, is for that to be an incentive that you work toward. So as you know, we can't bonus at admissions, which we're going to be talking about compensation later, but we can't give bonuses. But what you can do is allow people to maybe work 1 day a week, from home, and do what you said, those enrollment appointments or the appointment setting for the following week, almost as a reward. Like maybe they're not hired in that way, but hey, you've been meeting your goals, you've been doing great. Work from home on Fridays, something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or if it's, a caveat for the right person, the right fit, the right role, like being open to that idea. I think it's just a lot of schools are not open to it. And I really don't understand why. I think that we have to be flexible, just like, we have to change our approach to reach our students. We also have to change our approach to our culture and what's acceptable and how we're going to treat our employees and what we're going to offer to them in order to make people happy and make them feel like this is long-term going to be a good fit for them.
Sure. Let's shift a little bit, Becky, and talk about the role of admissions and if it's harder today versus before. Here's what I want to say to start out, is that if you've been in the beauty industry a long time, you remember the days where literally people were walking in off the streets. and they were enrolling in anything. And today it's like we have to spend so much money and spend 2, 3, sometimes 4 appointments to even get these people enrolled. Is enrolling today harder, you think, compared to before?
I don't think so. I think admissions has always been a hard job, and that's just being honest. I just think that people don't understand that it's a hard job when they go into the role. I just don't think that that is the picture that's painted by the person who's hiring. I think they want to make it sound like this glamorous role that's like, oh, it's so much fun. You get to give tours, you get to do events, and people make it sound like, oh, it's amazing. And then they get into the role and they realize how hard it is and how much rejection there is. And it is a really hard job, but it's the most rewarding job anyone's ever going to have. And I think that is like the cold hard truth. I think that people just don't understand that this is a hard job. And I think
Let's talk about that rejection, because I posted a video today on LinkedIn specifically about that, which you commented on, Becky. I think you would agree with it. I think the fact is, you guys, if you get 100 leads into your system, 15 might enroll. If you're a good rep, 15.
If you're good. Yeah. 15 to 20 if you're good. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Which is like, 90, 80 people saying, no, not right now, or just not even responding to you. I don't think owners and directors, or even people who are not in admissions, understand that level of rejection. Like, imagine if you're an educator in a school and 90% of your class didn't show up. How terrible would you feel about yourself? You know what I mean? Imagine 90% don't show up. Could you imagine that rejection? I'd go home and be like, I'm a terrible teacher. No one wanted to come to my class today. How do you think admissions feels? It is constant rejection. And I don't think we are leaning into that enough. I think there really is, a mental health crisis in America, and it doesn't make it any better when 90 people are saying no to you. How do we combat that?
No, you're right. And I think it really starts, with the hiring process and really painting a clear picture for the candidate of what does the day-to-day look like, and asking some hard questions during the interview process, and making sure that that person is going to be able to handle it and have that, that right fit and that thick skin. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, you really do. And you can't take it personally, because it's not just you. This is the industry, right? These are the industry metrics and standards. And it's like 10 to 15% enroll, 10 to 12% start. And we can always increase those numbers. And, the more we increase our skill sets, we can get that up there. But that's still out of 100 people. If you're a very skilled admissions representative, you're maybe getting up to 20%. So that's still 80 out of 100. So it's definitely just a different way of looking at things. It's really all about finding people with a growth mindset and a positive attitude, because that's really 100% what it takes to be successful in admissions.
And honestly, people who prioritize taking care of themselves. I talk to a lot of admissions reps, and sometimes they get to the point of burnout, and I say, like, walk away. Like, leave your desk for 15 minutes, go outside, go for a walk, feel some fresh air, feel some sun, go get a coffee, go drink some water, go do something for you, and just clear your head. Especially if you're getting so many rejection phone calls in a row, it can be really easy once you get them on the phone to almost like take all that anger that you've had all day out on that person. Or if you get someone doesn't show up for a tour and you're like, oh my God, I was here waiting for you. What happened? Like, that really is just a reflection upon, your entire day. We have to breathe. We have to reset. I have a friend in admissions who has a meditation app, and every hour for 5 minutes she meditates. And she's like, I know this sounds stupid, but it's literally changed my life. I was like, that does not sound stupid. You need to take care of yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I always tell brand new admissions reps when I'm helping to train them, you have to make yourself a priority. You have to take your lunch breaks. You have to allow yourself to go to the bathroom, because you literally get so busy doing all of the things and wanting to do more and be more. And, if you're a high achiever, which hopefully you are getting that type of a person into the role, because that's what you need, you know, it's hard for that person to take a step back. And we really need to help people realize the importance of that, because they always say you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So we need to make sure that our admissions professionals are being taken care of, that they're taking care of themselves, that they're taking their lunch breaks, you know, they're taking time to create, you know, get to know people on the campus. There's so many times where they just go and they're busy all day and their door is shut and their meetings and they're taking phone calls, and it's like they don't even know who are the instructors. They don't bond with financial aid. They don't do all of the things that they need to do to be better in their role because they're so busy.
Yeah. And I think it can be really, really easy to become a negative person in admissions because of that. I also am a big fan of not just firing, but possibly moving your talent to different areas of a school.
Yeah.
And this doesn't mean just always having to open up roles for all these people that don't work out, but truly everyone does have talents, and maybe your admissions team has burnout and would be better served in a different role in your school, even if it's for 6 months or a year or even permanently. Is that something you see, Becky, maybe admissions moving over to an FA position or another position within a school?
Yeah, I've seen that. And I actually have seen that a lot with people moving into admissions too. So I'm a big proponent of it. I think that people come to a place of to work, and they want to know that there's room for growth and opportunities to try out different roles and see what they're going to do best. So I think that that's great, even just for the school, you know, to say, hey, when you have a role open in another area, let your staff know, like, they should be the first person that has the opportunity to apply, because, you know, you could save yourself a lot of time and money if you got someone right there that's interested.
Yeah, I agree. I do see your questions in the chat. I promise we are getting to them later in this webinar. So just hold tight with us and we will get to some of the job posting stuff. Let's talk about some other reasons why people may be quitting. So I loved what you said about them being a wrong fit. I think that, you know, it's a big reason. I think the elephant in the room.
They're not getting paid enough? What?
They're not getting paid enough.
I can say that. I can honestly say that. I mean, I'm someone who has been in admissions for a lot of years, and I can say, yeah, you know, admissions, it needs to be paid well. They're expected to perform at a high level. They're expected to be a professional, and they, you know, they should be compensated as such, especially, you know, with the laws changing and with us not being able to make commissions and not being able to have bonuses. You know, if you have the right person in there, you know, you need to pay them well so that they're able to be happy and to thrive in the role. And, you know, they're not going to be looking for other opportunities.
I agree. Stick with us, guys. We're going to be talking about ranges and what we think starting reps should get paid and experienced ones. I want to jump to job postings. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Where do we find them? Where do we find really good reps? I have things I tell schools, but I would love to hear some advice from you.
Okay.
Where you should post.
So I am a big proponent of the admissions role is a professional role. So we should be advertising on professional sites. So places like LinkedIn, places like Indeed, places like Monster, those are our go-to. I don't like to see things like on Facebook and social media. I think it's great to like put it out there, but it always should have the link back to the original post where we're going and we're filtering those responses. I think that, you know, this is a role that requires a certain level of professionalism. It is the face of the school. It's the front line. It's the first person. So we need someone that is going to carry themselves accordingly, and that's going to have, you know, the experience needed to be able to withstand this role. So I think at the end of the day, you're really looking for a professional. So you need to advertise in those professional arenas. That's my opinion.
How do you feel about recent grads?
Recent grads are good, but they're going to need a lot of help and a lot of training. So I think it depends on what you need. Like, you know, do you have the ability to nurture someone and teach them and train them? Or do you really need someone that can just jump in and take off? Like, I think that a lot of people that, do admissions, they start off really young, and then, it's like they take a good year to learn the role. Take a good
I
year.
gotta be honest with you. I love a graduate. I do. I love someone who's licensed in one of the areas of beauty to be in that position if possible. When they're recent, school is so recent that when they tour and they meet with people, they make it about them. I personally witnessed this more times than I can count, where they're trying to relate. And I've talked about this before a lot. When you try to relate with someone, it can come off almost like you're one-upping them, as opposed to just like listening to their story. And when you're in admissions, you just have to shut up. You just have to listen to this lead talk, because they're going to share their story and they're going to talk themselves into going to school. When you get a recent grad, they're often a know-it-all, and they just went through the course and they just want to talk about themselves and their schooling. I love someone licensed, but sometimes you just need that, kind of like you said, like a little bit of a gap for them to mature. And maybe kind of get out there in the field and then come back. So if someone has gone to your school in the past, I do think that's wonderful. This is what I tell school owners when I meet with them. Go to a local Sephora or Ulta, find someone who is hungry, just like, cute, bubbly, fun, walking around selling makeup, offer them a position. Often those people are looking for, listen, when you work like in a Sephora or an Ulta, you're working weekends and you're working evenings. You offer something that is a daytime schedule still in a passion field that they're interested in. And I have seen several schools become successful by finding little hungry salespeople in those roles. So there's my suggestion. Also, I know a school that hired someone from like the Sally's Beauty. They like went to check out, they were buying some shampoo and they were like, she was just so professional, so good. We offered her a job and she's been our rock star. So that might be a good way to poach them, or go to your competitor and find their best rep. No, I'm joking. Don't do that.
No, don't do that, Jen. Don't do that.
So
Oh, don't do that. Honestly, I think let's talk about that for a second though. Those people are going to come in thinking they know everything and they know the best way to do it because of the way that they've been taught and trained. And it's harder to train that type of a person to do it the way you want them to do it. So keep that in mind too.
Are you talking about someone who's worked in a like an Ulta or something?
No, your competitor comment.
Oh, your competitor. You bring up something really, really good, because a lot of people ask, do I need someone experienced at admissions? And sometimes I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you don't, because those admissions people are often not coachable. They're using old school practices. They're really hard, right, to bend into the kind of like new Gen Z way of doing things. I think you bring up a really, really great point. We someone from another school and they just come with bad habits.
They do. And a lot of times if you have a certain system or way of doing things, they might be obstinate to that. So I think that's just something you need to ask. I think having really solid interview questions is important. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but I think, educators make really good admissions reps. And I've seen that time over time. I don't think there's anybody like that just comes in perfect, because, maybe someone with a strong sales background is going to be aggressive, and maybe someone with the education background is going to be, word vomiting and giving them so much information and, over educating. And then, someone with previous experience comes with a fixed mindset of ways of doing things. But I think it's like, how do we find a person that's moldable and that is a team player and that is willing to keep an open mindset and do the way things we want them to do them, and coming with the right qualities that we want? And one thing I do want to just mention is I think we should be posting that in the job description, because I know we were kind of talking about job descriptions. And I think we should be posting like, what is the type of person? Like if we're going on LinkedIn or we're going on Indeed or on Monster, who are we looking for? Who is the ideal person for the role? Like what do we want them to look like? Like what are the skill sets that they bring to the table? And then the other thing is just, who are you? What is your culture? Because I think that's important to be transparent about. Like why should that person come work at your school? What do you have to offer? What is the experience like to be a part of your culture? And I think
love the transparency side, Becky. I think you bring something up that I read an article this week, which means I saw a TikTok that said that Gen Z will not apply for a job if they don't have salary and benefits listed, and sometimes hours listed in the actual job description.
Yeah.
This whole like to be determined based on experience, guys, get with the times. Nope. I would go right past that. Stop it. Just put it in there. Put your salary, put your benefits, put everything right there in the job listing. I think you're going to get more applicants, and I think you're going to get a better quality. So is that what you suggest as well, Becky?
Yeah, 100%. The more transparent you can be, the better you can be. And so I think salary should be a range, because I do think it's going to depend on their experience, how much you like them, what they bring to the table. So I always recommend a range, or you could say starting at and put the amount. But I would put something. I wouldn't, that's a red flag if you don't put anything in the role. So I would definitely speak to that. If you have benefits, I would speak to that as well. And I would just
your time. You're going to waste your time having people who are wanting $85,000 applying for your $45,000 job. You're literally wasting your time going through them and their time for applying.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. It's just, let's just be transparent about what it is, what we're looking for, who we're looking for. And then we're going to see the quality of the applicants change with how we create the job posting. If you are not getting good applicants, you probably have a bad job post.
It's true. Let's talk about interviewing. So we finally get some decent people to interview. I know that you are a master hirer of beauty schools. Let us know some of your really good questions to ask on the interview process, or even just other tips in general.
Yeah. So one thing I think that's really important about interviewing is to have a process. So I think that for admissions, everybody that you're considering should go through a phone interview. And I feel like that's missing a lot of times. A lot of schools don't do the phone interviews. And why I think the phone interview is so important is because this gives you an opportunity to get an inside look of what would the student experience with this person over the phone. Because we know that a big part of this job,
you just said a mouthful there. You are allowing yourself to feel what the lead feels being on the phone with the person. I think that's great. Yeah.
So definitely qualify everybody with a phone interview first, and kind of see if they can kind of lead you right during that interview. What kind of vibes do you get from that person? Are they able to carry a conversation? Is it comfortable? Are they awkward on the phone? Are they confident over the phone? Because a big part of their job is going to be interacting with people over the phone. So if they can't even make it through a phone interview and you don't feel comfortable, you should shut it down right then and there.
If you like them on the phone, then we want to pivot them to an in-person interview.
Yes, in-person interview. And then I would recommend, that you do this at the campus whenever possible, or at your school. So that way they get to see, everything, in action. They get to meet the people, they're going to be working directly with and for. So I would have an in-person interview. And then just take it a step further. And, a third interview would be with a higher up person. So for example, if you are part of, a school that has multiple levels, maybe the admissions director is the one that's doing the in-person interview, but then the operations director is doing, kind of like a last interview. Or if it's not the operations director, maybe it's the owner, right? Or maybe it's, a corporate person, if you're a part of a franchise that, or, somebody at a higher level. And again, what this is doing is this is setting you up for that really serious long-term fit in the role, because they're going through 3 interviews to get this job. And they're understanding, well, dang, this is an important role. This is an important job. It's not just, I'm going to come in, walk in, bring my resume and get hired on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I like that idea of having multiple people meet with them, not just your admissions director, but definitely bring other people in there, get their advice, get women have intuition that men are not born with. I'm telling you, there's something about just having, a woman you trust in the building, meeting with whoever you hire. I'm just a fan of that because I feel like a lot of times our gut instincts are better than men. What about questions to ask?
Yeah, so let's talk about questions. Okay, so I think that we want to find out what attracted you to this role. Like, why did you apply for this job? So let's find out what in the posting or what is motivating them to want to do admissions.
Great. Love
right?
it.
And the answer will be different. Maybe some people are like, oh, I really love working with people, or I love event planning. So you're going to find out like what part of the job is drawing them in, and naturally what is going to be kind of their strengths in the role. So that's a really key question. I think another question is, again, we're looking for a long-term fit. So I think we should straight up ask our, interviewees, what would make this a good long-term fit for you?
Becky, stop right there for a second. How do you feel then about people who are in an admissions role who know this is not what they want to do long-term? Do you feel like admissions it's not a job, it's a career, so you need to get someone in there who's in it to win it, and you should eventually pivot them out of that role? Or are you okay with someone who's like, cool, stay here and then figure it out?
I think admissions typically is usually someone that's there for 5 years or less because they're moving up and they're moving on. I think that's just typically the role of admissions. Does it have to be that way if you get the right person and you're able to keep them in the role? I mean, why not just promote them? You know what I'm saying? Like, have opportunities. Or if they're happy, yeah, there's a lot of people who have been in their roles for many, many years. But
I feel like
I'm
that's
talking
important. I feel like that's important to stop and talk about though for a second, because it's funny. My husband was a general manager of a restaurant for over 20 years, and he would come home and be like, these people don't care. These grill cooks, they come in high or just whatever. And I'm like, you're a manager and they're not. Like, why would they care? They're a line cook. Like, I don't know if you know this, but like their future, they're not planning on being a dishwasher for 20 years. So like, cut them a break. Expectations should be lower. And I feel like sometimes in admissions, the owner is like, if this isn't your everything, why are you here? Get out of here. And I'm thinking, you can have that position if you're paying them a lot of money, but sometimes what these people are getting compensated, it is a job.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I would say though, we don't want to be having a person in there for less than a year. I mean, and to me, we're asking like, what is going to make this a good role for you? What's going to make this a good fit for you long-term? And let's be honest, long-term now is 2 to 5 years. That's long-term for any
2 to 5 years, guys. We're not looking for people to be here for 10 or 15 years. If they are fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not.
Yeah, that would be great as long as they're doing well and they're a good fit. But when I say long-term, let's put that into perspective. Long-term is 2 to 5 years, 2 to 3 years. I mean, we know that that's just kind of the way of the world. And so we have to know that expectation going in. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to hire someone, go through the process of training them and have them leave 6 months later. I mean, that's just wasting our time.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to cost you more in the long run. So I think that is great to ask them about, how long they're looking to stay in this position. So I think that's completely fair. What else you got on your way of questions?
I would say, really what we should be doing is we should really be painting a clear picture during the interview process of what the role is like.
Agreed.
And when I say this, like, we're not sugarcoating it. We're not making it sound like it's this glamorous, amazing thing. We're talking about how it is a hard job and we are trying to scare the person almost. Like, literally, when I interview people, I literally try to scare them out of doing admissions.
Wow. I mean, Yeah, because if you can get past that, if you can get past Becky's scare interview, then you're a perfect then you're a perfect fit for this position.
No, but I'm serious because they have to know it's not an easy job. People, I can't
agree.
even tell you how many times I'm training and they're like, well, nobody really told me it was going to be like this. They told me I was just going to give tours. I was going to have fun. I was going to go to high schools. I was going to be a guest speaker. I didn't know I had to create the presentation and I had to do all this. Like, well, that kind of goes back to the manager. Like, what are we setting as the expectations? Do they know what this role entails? Do they know that this is the bloodline of the school, that there's a lot of pressure? Can they handle pressure? Have they ever had quotas? Like, these are the things we need to ask.
Are you someone who works well with goals? This is something I like to ask admissions all the time. Are you driven by meeting a goal? Because if our goal is enroll as many as you can, that's a really terrible goal.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Everyone needs a number. Usually admissions people do have this sales side to them where they want to achieve it so that they can celebrate it when they get there. So I think making sure that these are, sales driven, number driven people, I think that's important. I also want to point out that admissions people sometimes are not the best at paperwork. They just, let's be honest, like that is something we can train in processes. And what we're wanting in admissions is someone who just knows how to talk to people, who knows how to listen, who knows how to be empathetic, who just feels comfortable talking to different types of people. If we're talking about other jobs, I think that would be good in admissions, even just like a bartender or a server, someone who is so used to working with all these different personalities and talking to different people. That's a great type of person to have in that position. So at the end of the day, sometimes we get really bogged down with like, well, how good are they at paperwork and how good are they at this? And it's like, you can teach that. We can teach that. You cannot teach this charismatic sales side to you. That's just, you have it or you don't.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And another big industry that's great for admissions, kind of like transitioning, is real estate. I've had a lot of luck with people like that have done real estate in the past or have a real estate background, because you have to find people who are self-starters too in admissions, because you kind of have to, plan your day. You have to be someone who takes initiative to, like, if you have free time, you keep yourself busy, kind of keep yourself on task. So I find that that's why people, with education background or real estate background, they typically are pretty good at, being self-starters.
That's also why timeshare salespeople have to have a real estate background. They will not hire you unless you have a real estate license, for that very reason. I mean, it takes a very, very special person. Kathy, thank you for joining us in the chat and saying something. Yeah, you can't teach personality. I love that. I want to talk about why a lot of people joined us today. I want to talk about salaries. I feel like this is a discussion that sometimes we shy away from, and let's just put it out here to start with. Salaries may be different depending on where you are in the nation. Okay. I used to work in Southern California. Those salaries were a lot higher than somewhere here in Middle Tennessee where I live. So we're going to talk about some national averages and things to expect, but a lot of it sometimes is regional. Just a little FYI there. All right, let's talk about admissions reps, not directors, but the average rep. What can they expect as a range of salary?
Okay, so been doing a lot of research on this, just national averages, and across the country, take in the higher places and the lower places, and you come up with anywhere between 40 and 50K. That is the national average for someone with an admissions representative title or admissions advisor, admissions coordinator, that same level role. That's what we're looking at. So most of the sites that I've found and researched are 42,000 to 44,000. That is really kind of the median. And most hourly wages are 18 to 21 in job postings that actually list, the hourly wage.
And this is admissions reps, not specifically for beauty schools, but that title of admissions reps for all type of schools.
All
Do you
schools.
have any specific data more on beauty school averages?
Yes, it is a little higher for beauty schools. So beauty schools are career colleges or trade schools, career training. And typically that is going to pay a little higher than your traditional community colleges or your universities. So that average actually went up a little bit. Specific for beauty schools is $48,000 or $23 an hour.
And this again is not a director role. This is a rep role. That is the average. And usually, do you see most schools that would include insurance and other types of benefits?
I think that is really dependent on this type of school and the owner. I see it all across the board. I see some are offering partial benefits, some are offering full, some are offering none. So I think that this is just strictly based off of their pay, not including benefits. This is not a part of it. This is just their pay.
You know, as we are attracting different types of people, it might be good to think about having insurance and benefits to maybe keep someone in that role. So again, not just pay, but sometimes the other perks that go along with it. What about directors?
Okay, so directors, the national average would be about $56,000 per year or $27 per hour.
And give us a little background about what you think would make that jump from the 48 to the 56, not just rep to director, but when you're in a director role, is that, you know, a few years experience, you think, or is that a starting admissions director role? Any sort of background on that?
Yeah. So again, I think it's like really going to depend on the regional area and what you're offering, like your starting reps. But going back to that, if you are finding someone who is the right fit, that has the right background, that's going to be, you know, that long-term, not leaving you after 6 months, my personal opinion is that admissions should be a salaried role. 100%. I think that it's a dynamic role. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of hours that go into it. You know, there's events that we do, you know, there's traveling that we do to schools. We have community events that are going on. So I believe whether it's an admissions representative or admissions director, that salary needs to be a discussion that we're having. And also, if we're starting hourly, with the transition to salary, once you've kind of proven yourself that you're good in the role and that you're an asset, I think that is something that I see as a big miss of like retaining the right person, is really wanting to hold on to this hourly concept. But I think with admissions, because it's such a dynamic role, we need to be more flexible and willing to look at it as a salaried position. So, and it's very seasonal too. So the fall is going to be a lot busier, right? It's going to be a busier time, and maybe they're going to work more than 40 hours a week in the fall.
Well, quite frankly, I see a lot of these hourly girls going home and responding to text messages because they don't want their pipelines to hurt, and they're not clocking in for that. That's going unpaid. Your admissions people, they want to respond to their leads because they know that they have goals to meet. They want to go home in the evening. And if it's a really quick text, they want to send it because they want to have a tour tomorrow. So they're not, you know, doing nothing. So that right there is the perfect reason to maybe shift them to that salary so that they can have some expectations when they're not at the school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think that it's a professional role. So I think whether that person brings experience or not, you know, I would start an admissions rep salary around 40,000. I mean, and I wouldn't, if it was me looking for a job and I was, you know, had these high expectations to meet these goals and meet these numbers, you know, if it was offering less than that, I'm not sure how attracted I would be to that role, if I'm being honest.
I agree. And so if we're talking about an admissions director, maybe someone is moving from a rep to a director role. Which oftentimes I see, you guys, if you're usually under 7 campuses, a lot of times those admissions directors are still daily enrolling, or part-time enrolling. They're not just a director and they're hands off and then everyone managing people. Usually they are enrolling daily. That is normal. But if you're going from rep to director, 45 to 50 is probably a good starting range.
50. If you're
minimum.
going to a director, yeah, I would say 50. I would say 50 starting would be a good spot. And so, and a lot of times, you know, if you're receiving a promotional increase, we're looking at like a 10% minimum of what's acceptable to ask for. So, I mean, if you're a rep making, you know, 40 or 45, you can do the math from there and say, okay, you know, if I'm going to be receiving a title, you know, bump in addition to that, what can I ask for? What's acceptable? Well, I would say a minimum of 10% is, you know, what I would be looking for if it was me.
And then when is a good time to ask for a raise? Should this be done annually or every couple years? How often should you be revisiting the salary of your admissions reps?
Yeah, good question. So I think that if you have the right person in place, that you should be offering, you know, quarterly reviews with your team just to let them know how they're doing. You know, are they meeting expectations? And then with the opportunity for yearly increases. Now, does that mean, you know, if you hire someone on and they're new, I'm a really big fan of like, okay, let's bring someone on, let's see how they do, and then let's revisit where we are, you know, do a 6-month review and then a yearly review for that first year. So let's have 2 reviews in the first year. And then after that, you have the opportunity for yearly reviews and yearly advancement.
And you better remember that, because that rep they'll be
Oh,
counting
yeah.
down the days till that 6 month is up. So that's completely fine if you guys want to, you know, hire in a little bit of a lower area. But if you are promising a review, and have some benchmarks for them. Let's talk about benchmarks, because it can't always be, you know, based on enrollment, but there are a lot of benchmarks you can do to evaluate someone's performance. We can't give bonuses, but is conversion rate something? Is it outreach? How are we evaluating someone's performance in admissions?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of things. It can't be just like, oh, you know, you're being fired, or you're being reprimanded just based off of numbers, right? But what we know is a direct correlation to if someone's hitting their numbers is if they are following the processes and procedures that we have in place, right? Mm-hmm. And if they're meeting their kind of milestone metrics, you know, their KPIs and things like that. So that's why I think it's so important for admissions to meet with their managers on a weekly basis to kind of look at how they're doing, and, you know, talk about these things. And if that person is falling below the benchmarks, we need to be communicating that to them. So it's not just like, oh, you're pulling the rug from underneath me. I had no idea I wasn't meeting the standards or the benchmarks. Like, this is what our expectations are. And every school will be a little bit different on what those look like. But we know we can work backwards of like, hey, if we want this many enrollments, then we need this much outreach. We need this many appointments. You know, we can do the math and figure that out based off different, you know, conversion rates and metrics. And I think what's most important is, are we communicating that to our people, and are they doing the daily tasks that will get us to the end result? And I think that's what we really train to and we look for, are those, you know, those daily activities that will motivate and drive the end result that we want.
Well, let's be honest. I know a lot of beauty schools, they're smaller. They are owned by someone who wears so many hats in a school. They often don't have the training manual. They often don't have the processes in place, or even the ability to properly onboard and train admissions staff. Mm-hmm. So what is your go-to with that? How do you feel? What is a good way to give additional training to some new reps for people who are wondering?
So I think that there's always, you know, a benefit to being a part of a larger system like a franchise. So for example, I know SPEC, the Salon Professional Education Company, you know, is a great option for people who want to have opportunities to have additional training, to have support in these areas, whether it's for admissions or education or compliance, regulatory. So I think that's always just a good thing to know and to understand that, you know, you can be a part of a franchise, you can be a part of a larger unit that will offer that support and that extra training to you. But I also think that this is just important for you to retain your people, is to have something in place, to have best practices and procedures, and to really have proper onboarding. So it needs to be, you know, the direct responsibility of the owner or the operations director to take that on.
Yeah, we have to be able to be finding our reps training. Guys, there's a lot of free content out there. I mean, we put out monthly webinars. We're not the only ones that put out webinars. I mean, you know, AACS has them. A lot of the state associations have them. Norton Norris has them. There's a lot of free content out there. I've been listening to podcasts that are specific to admissions. There's some really good ones out there as well. We just have to be better about giving resources to our staff and not letting them do it on their own.
Yeah, I agree. And just making the commitment to say, you know what, admissions is so important, but it's everybody's job. Like, we're all working together to fill the school. It's not just the admissions rep, you know, it's all of us together. But that owner and that operations director, they really need to take the time to put something together, put a training manual together, plug into like your people you work with, like who is your CRM, you know, what services do they offer? You know, you connect your admissions rep with your account rep from your CRM. They offer training as a part of their subscription usually. So they can reach out and get additional training.
That is exactly. We work with vendors who all the time, you know, will either for a small fee or at no extra charge, because you already pay a subscription to them, we'll do some training. If you're using a CRM and you're onboarding someone new, someone's got to teach them, and who better than the actual CRM itself, instead of like, you know, your limited knowledge yourself on how to use the CRM. Someone just asked about podcasts. I'll tell you the one I listen to. Do you have any additional trainings that you
Well,
recommend?
I saw that Kathy was on the call. Kathy Bloechle, she does have Motivate with KAT, which is great. I know she has a podcast, lots of free content. So shout out to her with that. So, you know, I just happened to see her name pop up in the chat.
Yeah,
so
she has a great one. And she reposts a lot of her stuff on LinkedIn. Follow these people on LinkedIn, because honestly, that's where I end up seeing it. And then I open up my phone. Mission and Missions with Jeremy Tiers. I've listened to a lot of his episodes. He has lots of guests on that are fantastic. A lot of it's more higher ed, not beauty school specific, of course, but admissions is admissions and people are people. I mean,
right.
You know, I listen to even sales stuff and learn a lot just from some sales gurus out there, because sales is admissions, you guys. It doesn't just have to be, you know, admissions specific. I also I'm going to go ahead right now and put in the chat. We have about 5 minutes left. If you guys have questions, put them in there. The C-SPEN conference is coming up in August in New Orleans. I have a 4-hour admissions workshop that I'll be doing there, and it's going to be free. It's completely free, 4 hours. And it's a pretty expensive workshop that we're giving away if you just sign up for that conference. And if you use the code BSMG, which stands for Beauty Schools Marketing Group, BSMG, you can get $100 off your ticket. That 4-day conference is only $250 in New Orleans.
Wow.
The Ritz-Carlton, and there's $179 room rate for the Ritz-Carlton. I mean, insane. So come in August, come to New Orleans. It'd be so fun to hang out with you guys. That's another thing, right, Becky? There's a lot of industry events that we can send admissions people to.
Tons. Yes, tons. And it's so good to meet people, to network, to add people to your own personal network, to learn. I mean, I love it. I think everybody should be involved. I think there's a lot of just your rep should be on LinkedIn and you know, just networking with people. I mean, that's really what it's about.
You know, when you come home from an event refreshed, Like you went outside, it feels like a little bit of a mini vacation, but you're still learning and you're talking with other reps. It is huge. If you guys click that link, oh wait, I put it to host and panelists. I'm an idiot. Okay, let me, everyone. There you go. There's the link to that conference. And Tom Netting, who used to be the lobbyist for AACS, he is the lobbyist for C-SPAN. They're going to be releasing the schedule soon, but you can go back and find the 2022 schedule to see the types of classes they have. A bunch of regulatory stuff, financial ones, really good classes for owners. There's a golf event there. It's going to be lots of fun, and I would love to see you guys in New Orleans. Morgan, our account manager, if you work with BSD, she will also be there with us. Does anyone have any other questions that you want to pop into the chat while we still have Becky?
I know we had so much to cover. Like we had so much to talk about. I feel like there's still so much we could say and talk about. I guess one thing I'll just want to say while we're waiting to see if anyone has questions. If you are an admissions director that's hiring, or if you are an owner of a school, if you are more of an admissions manager role, please don't feel desperate to hire someone. I feel like we are so desperate to get someone in the seat and in the role and doing the job that we really choose the wrong person out of desperation. I think that if you just, follow kind of a procedure and a plan, like we talked about, having like that phone interview, having that in-person interview, having that third interview with another person to sign off on this decision, I think you'll find that, like, even if it takes a little bit longer, you're going to be really happy that you had the patience to stick it out for the right one. That's really going to make the difference in your culture, bring the right student in, make sure that you're growing, that's meeting your expectations. Because I think personally, that's where I see the biggest downfalls, that people are just in a rush, they get desperate, they're willing to take anyone. And then they're upset when that person isn't a great candidate. But sometimes we just have to be patient for that right one to come along.
I think that's wonderful advice. I could not agree more. It's going to cost you so much more money and time and headaches and gray hair in the long run if you keep hiring the wrong person and you're just, oh, I just want to check it off my to-do list. It's on my to-do list. I got to check it off. Got to hire someone, get anyone in there. Oh, you have a friend? Cool. Get her in here. Instead of really vetting them out and finding that right fit who's going to stick. There's a lot of really great reps that have joined us today, who I know personally. So thank you guys for joining us for our May webinar. We're really excited about our June webinar coming up. We're going to get that info out to you shortly. In the meantime, Becky, how can people reach out to you if they want to connect?
Yeah, I can put my email in the chat, and would love for people to connect with me there if they have any questions or want to talk about best practices for hiring or just admissions best practices in general. I would love for people to reach out.
Awesome. We loved having you on here, and good luck and congrats on Magnolia, your new baby.
Thank you.
When is she due?
She's due the first week of November.
Oh, wow. It's going to be a long summer for you.
Yes, it'll be a good one though.
For you. That is exciting. Thank you. There's your Gmail in there for everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will see you later. Bye.
Bye guys. Thank you.